This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallin, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited. Today is Tuesday, June 28, 2022 in the Gregorian calendar and the 29th day of the third Israelite Hebrew month of Sivan in the Hebrew Israelite calendar year 5782, a sabbatical Shemitah year. Welcome to episode 41 of our weekly Root and Branch Association Medical Fellowship seminars. The chairman of the fellowship is Dr. Vladimir Zlenko, the Dr. Semmelweis of our time. He needs everybody's prayers. He's recovering from a surgery he's undergoing a few days ago. And so please put him on your prayer list. And we welcome the seminar chair, Mr. Tzvi Livshits of New Jersey. He's a businessman who commutes between New Jersey and Jerusalem, and we actually happen to live around the corner from each other. But we rarely get to see each other in person. Finally happened a week and a half ago, down near the Sultan's Pool. Mm-hmm. And we welcome our guest speakers for tonight's highly unusual, I mean, they're all unusual, but this is even more unusual. Ladies first, Mrs. Cecily Routman of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the founder of the Jewish ProLife Foundation, and Rabbi Hananiah Weissman of Jerusalem, Israel, who most of you already know. Mrs. Routman, actually everyone here is a hero of our time, a modern Maccabee. In Mrs. Routman's case, a Deborah, a Boudica, a Joan of Arc, of course, shouldn't burn at the stake. We should live and be well. A larger-than-life hero who stood up, standing up against a flood of disinformation, misinformation from the era of Rav of our world about what the Jewish law is on abortion, and Rabbi Weissman, who is the Rabbi Weissman of our time, the subject of the story, the unheeded cry in World War II, except in Rabbi Weissman's case, his cry has been heeded, and more, amazingly, every week we see the Erev Rav and Amalek on the run. And not graciously or willingly, but they are losing. And now, without further ado, the subject is Roe versus Wade, Jewish law, abortion.
Hello? Yeah.
And the mega historic. Okay, now without further ado, let me hand over the mic to our chair, Mr. Tzvi Livshits, and his distinguished guests, Ms. Routman and Rabbi Weissman. And lady and gentlemen, it's all.
Hello, you kind of cut out there. I'm not sure if I'm on air. Can you everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know if it's my connection or Lowell's connection. So I just wanted to.
I don't know. We seem to have lost. I don't know internet connection, and maybe we should start recording again. I all of a sudden don't see Cecily, and I don't see you.
I hear you, but I can't see you.
I'm here, Mr. Gallin. I'm here. I can't see you. You're in a little black square now.
You're just yeah. You know, these Israeli internet companies are, you know.
Do you know, Rabbi? Do you know if Mr. Gallin has an Ethernet connected device, or is he on Wi-Fi?
I'm not sure.
Not sure either, but he has bandwidth issues periodically. Anyway, I think we can start.
Okay.
So I just want to dedicate this episode to the refuah of Dr. Zlenko, Zev, Velvel, Wolf, Zev Ben Leah, may have a complete refuah, and we need him. We still need him here. We're not done. He's not done with his work, and neither are we actually. So I just want to welcome firstly Rabbi Hananiah, and for those of you, I'm assuming you guys know. Those of you guys don't know who Rabbi Hananiah is. He's been really fighting the good fight here in Israel with everything that's been going on with, I guess, the vaccines. Not just the vaccines, but a lot of the stuff that's coming out of kind of the woke camp, and what Frank Zlenko like to call the Sitra Achra, which is really basically what it is, if you're into the Kabbalah, which we are, Hasidut. What else did I want to say about? Yeah, we also speak a lot about Shidduchim. It's funny. I was watching your old video. It's like from a year ago about YU. The whole issue with YU, and you mentioned that you're basically the only, I guess you could say, modern Orthodox Anglo rabbi, at least in Israel, that came out openly against all this vaccine stuff and all these things, and Hashem kind of made it so, because you mentioned the whole thing, your story with smicha, and how you barely got smicha, or you didn't plan on getting smicha, this whole thing. So I think that's really amazing. So
let me just make a small but very important correction. I'm not a modern Orthodox rabbi. I don't use these labels. I don't fit into any particular category, and I don't want to. We shouldn't have these categories. I'm a Torah observant Jew. I follow the Torah, and that's it.
I agree, and I agree. But with that said, you're the only one in the Anglo world that basically came out and said what you said. So Cicely Routman, I'm looking at you. There's like two, I guess, articles that were written about you recently, and I'm looking at the headlines, right? And one of them is on, I guess it's Pittsburgh Jewish Chronicle. Local woman adds Jewish pro-life voice to abortion, and then there's a byline. Cicely Routman is the minority when it comes to Jews' views on abortion. That's okay with her. I don't know who they're thinking of in terms of Jews' views on abortion. I mean, if you want to ask people who actually follow the Torah, you're not the minority, right? So that's one thing. The other headline is Jews News of Northern California, J Weekly, the Christian voice behind the Jewish anti-abortion group. So that's where I got very confused. And so can you please, I guess, clarify what the discrepancy between these two headlines, and help us understand what you do and what your background is, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Tzvi. I don't exactly know how it is I'm here this morning or this afternoon Jerusalem time, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Mr. Gallin, for including me in the forum today. And I just want to, send my prayers and best wishes to Dr. Zlenko, who I've been following and listening to and admiring for a long time now. So I started this Jewish Pro-Life Foundation in 2006 because back then I saw where the Jewish community in general was going with the issue, which was to reclassify Judaism as a baby-killing cult and to declare that abortion is a Jewish value and abortion access is a Jewish right. I saw this all coming, and it really disturbed me. And I could find no Jewish voice in the public square that was countering it. So I stepped into this mess, and I'm so grateful that I did. And I've, of course, I found Rabbi Weissman, who, it's just so wonderful to meet rabbis who are, honest, courageous, Torah-based, principled people. The first article was from the Pittsburgh Jewish Chronicle, where I'm based in Pittsburgh. And that was a couple years ago, I think, that article. They were doing a whole issue on the abortion question and reached out to me. I had put some advertisements in that local paper, so they knew of me, and I was on friendlier terms with the publisher, the editor there. And yes, so we had a really nice interview, and, they said I was a minority voice, which according to Pew and Gallup I am. 83 and 86% of Jews believe that abortion should be legal in most cases, and that it's moral. It's a moral solution to unwanted pregnancy. The second article that you mentioned is recent. last year we were approached by a Jewish law firm to submit a amicus brief to the Supreme Court on the Dobbs case. And that Jewish attorney was filing his own case, but he told me that I was going to have to find another lawyer to file our case. And I know some people through our pro-life work over the last so many years. And I was mentioned it to one woman that I met at the March for Life several years ago, and she said, well, maybe we'll do it. She worked for the Justice Foundation, and indeed, her employer, the Honorable Attorney Alan Parker, stepped up to file our brief for the Dobbs case. So now the author of that article is a young journalist from the Forward, and he interviewed me several times at length, and we actually became, I would say, on very good terms. And I was not too unhappy about that piece, because even though it did emphasize somehow and try to discredit us, I think, a bit because of our Christian connections with this foundation, this Justice Foundation, they were so happy to file our brief, and it was the first Jewish pro-life, religiously based amicus brief to ever show up at the Supreme Court of the United States. You know, from Planned Parenthood, from Planned Parenthood versus Casey and all that, and then Roe. It was always these radical Jewish feminists that were filing these briefs, and so the court only knew this pro-abortion Jewish perspective. So I was really glad that Mr. Parker stepped up to do it. And as I talked about in the article, we do not need to be critical or somehow shun the Christian pro-life ethic because they get it from Tanakh. It's not my fault that, most Jews have forgotten it or conveniently set it aside, and that the Christians have picked up the torch and carried our message of life and into the world, which is what, Jews are supposed to be doing that. So anyway, that's about those two articles. And what we do is we bring much needed pro-life education into Jewish communities. We offer pregnancy care and adoption referrals that are Jewish friendly. And we have a healing program for Jewish men and women who suffer after abortion. And we're doing this to try to save Jewish lives, heal Jewish hearts, reclaim Judaism as the original pro-life religion, which it is before us. Pagan child sacrifice, was normal. So that's, and it's doubly important now with all this anti-life media coverage of so many Jewish organizations from, very reform to, unfortunately, Orthodox denominations. Somehow or another rationalizing killing babies in the womb. So it's important that our voice gets heard, and we are getting out there. I had wanted originally to put a Jewish pro-life voice in the public square, and I joke around a little bit. Now that the Forward has actually acknowledged our existence, I think we're getting there. And so that's about us in a nutshell.
Got it. So I'm just curious, and maybe Rabbi Weissman, you can kind of also jump in on this question as well. It's I guess a halachic thing. I mean, I actually was in America on Shavuot, and I went to a lecture by a rabbi. I'm not going to say who. He's actually he's one of the, I would say, Rabbi Weissman, you went to YU. I would call him one of the YU throwbacks, meaning he's one of the good ones. You know what I mean? And he gave a whole thing, at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning about the issue of abortion in Judaism. And he brought all the sources, every source, this, that source, legit Orthodox sources. And basically the idea is that, the only time you're allowed to, in Judaism, you're allowed to do an abortion is when the mother's life is in danger. I think there's another instance. So we have this whole thing going on. And if you talk to Christians, I mean, I could be wrong, but it's basically never. Like if you talk to Catholics, for example, it's basically never. So now we have this little kind of conundrum where, okay, and I'm just playing devil's advocate. This was sent back to the states now. Roe versus Wade is canceled. This was sent back to the states. There's a few states who immediately outlawed abortion. Oklahoma. There's a few. I think there's like 12 states, right? So now let's just say you are an Orthodox Jewish woman who lives in a red state, and Has v'shalom, you find yourself in a situation where you have to perform an abortion because your life's in danger. I don't even know how this works in terms of the laws in that state. Does this person have to travel now to a different state?
Well, Cecily can answer that better than I can, but from what I understand, and in fact, I've heard it from you when you were on my program as well, that I think all of the states that have these trigger laws passed have that exception built in, that if the mother's life is in danger, then that would be the one exception, which is the only exception according to Jewish law, that she would be able to have the baby terminated. That's the only exception. No one is saying that a mother should die because of a bad pregnancy. I don't think there's any such law.
Yeah.
That's correct, Rabbi. Yeah, that's correct. And in fact, I just wrote an op-ed piece that the Jewish press printed. Thank God for them for doing that. That according to the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, abortion is never needed to save a mother's life if the pregnancy endangers her life, because abortion is the deliberate murdering of an innocent child, and these life-threatening pregnancies are generally later on in a pregnancy when the baby is fully formed and pain capable. So what they do now is they just remove the baby from the uterus, and if it's viable, they put it in neonatal intensive care, and the baby lives and grows up and has a place in the world. If the baby is too young, it's allowed to die peacefully, and then there's a burial and a mourning period for the baby. Also, this is something that I'm trying to educate the Orthodox rabbinate about, because these are the kinds of real situations that they are not fully aware of. And it's a win-win situation for everyone, because then if a rabbi knows about this alternative way of handling a life-threatening pregnancy, then of course he doesn't have murder on his hands. And then the mother, of course, wants her baby to live. The parents want their baby to live if possible and not to go through a terribly brutal ending to their short life, right? Also, people forget. We hear all the time about how abortion is good for women, right? Well, it's not, and it's very dangerous. And so a later-term pregnancy like this is very dangerous to have an abortion at that time. And so many women who have later-term abortions are mortally wounded or severely wounded and end up having terrible problems through uterine ruptures when the doctor is tearing that baby apart. And then they get these terrible problems, then they're infertile, and then there's no more babies. Also, it takes 2 to 3 days to perform an abortion, to prepare a woman for an abortion at this late stage. And so maybe she has high blood pressure or sepsis, or organ failure is pending. Waiting 2 or 3 days is not going to help her. She's going to die. So it's much quicker to just remove the baby by cesarean section and save both if we can. So this is the reality. But I found that in the more liberal Jewish communities, the life-threatening situations for the mother have been very expanded from the halakha ruling, which is a very narrow exceptional case, to anything goes, right? And which can be claimed, it may be mental distress or emotional distress. I think as a Jewish woman, and I shared this earlier today, every Jewish community should have a Respect Life group that rallies around women that have having problems with pregnancies, whether unplanned, unwanted, or planned and difficult. We should provide, pregnancy care, practical help, emotional support, groceries, whatever it takes. And then if she simply cannot handle the pregnancy or the taking care of the baby, then we offer to adopt that child. So Judaism is, we're the most compassionate sensitive religion on planet Earth. I always say in our work that, we'll go to great lengths to prevent a serial murderer from being executed because we cannot kill innocent people. We have to make sure he's not innocent first. So, but our babies, it's just a cavalier thing. So I'm trying to bring this message into the Jewish communities that we don't have to do this, and we can preserve, our future and Yiddishkeit through our children.
There is, by the way, an organization in Israel called Efrat that is doing exactly what you just mentioned, trying to help women who may, in theory, want to have the children, but they can't deal with it because of money issues or other such problems, to give them the help and support that they need. They have saved thousands of children. And I read in one of their postings somewhere that they have many, many stories of mothers who had the children, went through with the birth of the child, and none of them are sorry that they did in hindsight, but many, many children, killed the child, aborted the pregnancy, and many of them are very sorry after the fact.
Yes, it's just it's very unnatural to do this. And in America, we have one pregnancy care organization for Jewish women. It's called In Shifra's Arms. And the woman that started around when we did. And she ministers to women, Jewish women all over the country. They contact her. She provides practical help, health care, financial assistance, housing. If adoption is possible, she does that. She helps them after the baby's born. So that's true Judaism in action right there. Yeah. Unfortunately, I just read a rabbi on our board just sent me an article from the JTA today that Israel just, yesterday? Passed a new lenient abortion law.
Yeah.
So we really do, we're hoping to get our message into Israel, working on it, because there's a lot of misunderstanding and tragedy going on in the Jewish state. Yeah, along with the whole vaccination thing, the whole vaccination problems and the miscarriages of the babies because of it's just a war on children, and it's a shame.
It's really a war on human life. The so-called health minister in Israel, who's married to a man who's married to a man. So he's the last person who should be talking about saving children or having children, because he's totally opted out of that in the worst possible way. Is now trying to make it easier for women to terminate their pregnancies. How nice of him, because he cares about women so much.
I always say, until they have skin in the game, people do not step up. At some point, when they find the gene or the hormonal marker for gayness, and we have eugenics abortions for gay people, then they will step up and protect life.
Yeah. So I have a question for both of you. I guess from different. I guess you can answer from your different unique perspectives. You keep hearing this kind of like language of from these people from the well, they call themselves pro-choice. Right? The state is forcing us to have a baby. They keep saying the government is literally like they're sending out Chas v'Shalom, like a cop to your house to rape you, to have intercourse with you, and then he is forcing you to have a baby. And then they're saying, yeah, this is going to end up like America's going to end up like The Handmaid's Tale, that series. That's it. We have it. It's happening now, and that's what's happening. And I feel like I was listening to, I don't know if you know this show. There's a program called Young Turks. Right? It's like this leftist program I think they have it on YouTube. And the woman host there, she's just giving this whole rant about how listen, guys, you keep coming with your Bible and your Bible. The Bible says. Da, 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 da. And she's like, I don't really care what the Bible says. You want to believe it, you believe it. I don't believe it, and don't shove it down my throat. I feel like there's a voice that's not being heard here in terms of just language, in terms of just, I guess you'd say power, which is the Orthodox, the Torah Jewish voice in America, which is, there's not a lot of us in America. We're a very small number in terms of population. But I feel like when we do talk, the rare times that we do talk, in the media, people listen to us. They don't listen to evangelical Christians because they lampoon them. They think they're a joke. A lot of leftists say evangelical Christians, they like Israel because they want, Armageddon and all these horrible things. I feel like people will listen to us. Why are we not speaking?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, why people listen to Orthodox Jews, and I'm sure many listeners won't like this, but I won't let that stop me because I never do. They listen to Orthodox Jews because they know deep down, whether they're aware of it or they're willing to admit it or not, that we have the truth, which is also why the world is completely obsessed with Israel. Why is the world obsessed with everything Israel does and doesn't do and hold Israel to different standards than everybody else? Because they know that Israel is the real deal, even though we have a very bad government and it's not run according to the Torah, but they know Israel is where the real deal is. This is where this is the center of the world. This is where God's presence is most manifest. So that's why they perk up when Orthodox Jews have something to say. Now, unfortunately, many Orthodox Jews or so-called Orthodox Jews are very clever about taking the Torah and justifying what is antithetical to the Torah. They use their Torah knowledge to go against the Torah and to trick the innocent or the ignorant who don't know any better. That's why true Orthodox Jews who are not ashamed of the Torah and are not afraid of what people are going to say if we say the truth, they have the strongest voice, even though we're small in number, but people will pay attention if we speak up. And just one small comment about pro-choice, that's really a laugher because these people are not in favor of people having choice. They're the ones that are ramming everything down our throats. And in fact, anyway, what is this choice about murdering somebody? Are they in favor of people having choice to rape children, for example? Everything is a choice. Everything that we do or don't do in this world is a choice. We all have free choice, but that doesn't mean that it's virtuous to make it easy and accessible and to encourage people to make that choice. And one other thing, I'd like the choice to live in a Torah observant country. I choose to live in a Jewish land governed by the Torah. That is my choice. And this is not acceptable in a Jewish land governed by the Torah.
I have, thank you, Rabbi. I have a friend in New York City who has his ear to the ground about the Orthodox community living in it, and he sent me an archived article from 1972, New York Times, that the Rabbinical Council of America 80-member board unanimously voted to rescind the New York abortion law that passed in 1970 because they saw how out of control it was getting back then. So at that point, the council was unanimously opposed to legal abortion. They had no trouble getting their headers for life-threatening situations before these laws, and they won't have trouble getting them after because of the exceptions in even the red states. So that's an incredible thing. What has happened between 1972 and now? My feeling is that they're less, their donor base is a little more liberal, and so they don't want to offend any potential donors whose, their livelihood depends on their donor base. That's one problem. I suspect because society has moved into more liberal areas, they're having requests for terminations for less than life-threatening situations, social situations, family problems, and they want to be able to authorize those. And so they don't want limitations on abortion. They don't want any of those decisions questioned. I've heard they're worried an attorney general of a state that bans abortion will not allow the header for an abortion. But in my experience, and after talking with a lot of people, is that even the exceptions for the abortion ban, such as a heartbeat bill, which is incredibly ethical and moral, a heartbeat bill, the doctors that, there's like a few doctors, kind of like in Israel, there's few doctors that can authorize a woman's need to have an abortion. It's not tyrannical. And it fits quite nicely with rabbinical decisions about these things. So, yeah, but that's what I think's happened. Just the donor bases and the society has gotten more liberal. And they do not, as I shared earlier, they haven't kept up the yeshiva university, for one, and many other training places don't train rabbis in this area. They send them out. They don't know anything. I don't know. Do you guys get 2 hours at least in yeshiva on abortion and what to do about it? There's no understanding about the downside to women and families, and how do the siblings feel? Where's my sister? Where's my brother? Or just terrible problems, and the rabbis are not trained. If they were trained, if they knew about post-abortion healing, if they knew about life-saving alternatives to abortion and how you don't need to authorize an abortion for extreme mental distress or emotional problems, for example, all you need to do is give the woman support. Well, I think that they would speak up much more clearly about it. I mean, I was appalled when the Orthodox Union came out and said that they were against Roe v. Wade being overturned. It's like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it. That was terrible.
So I have a question, I guess, from just a legal standpoint. Like, it just seems like a lot of people don't, I mean, I guess maybe due to their age, I don't know. A lot of people who are protesting now weren't, even born yet when this decision was handed down. I mean, I wasn't even born yet, but at least I understand that Roe versus Wade is not a law. It was a court decision. There was a case in Texas where a woman lost a case in Texas and she appealed, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. I was saying to some of my friends or people on, reading on Facebook, I said, listen, like, if people want, not that I agree with this, but if you want this to be a law of the land on a federal level, if you want abortion to be law of the land on a federal level, bring it, or call your congressman, have a congressman or senator, write a bill and test it in Congress. And if it passes, I have people saying to me that the Supreme Court, even if a bill like that passes, the Supreme Court would strike it down. So I'm curious, like, is there a way for someone, if they wanted to have this literally as a law on a federal level, is there a way to do it? And would a Supreme Court, even like say a conservative or original Supreme Court, uphold a law, let's say passed by a bunch of Democrats and a bunch of rhinos? Is that a possibility?
Two things. First, they did try it. Our Democrat-controlled Congress did try that. They wanted to pass a bill, anticipating Roe being overturned, and it failed.
When was this?
Recently, just several months ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. The Women's Protection Act, something like that. I don't know exactly what it's called, but yeah. So they did try. I read the Dobbs case, the brief by Justice Alito that overturned Roe. It's an exceptionally brilliant and easy to read document, and it starts out by saying that there is no right in our Constitution for abortion. There has never been one, and that the justices in 1973 fabricated it. And if they couldn't find one, what they're supposed to do is look for some kind of common law in our history and tradition. They couldn't find that either. They tried to say that this is a due process issue from the 14th Amendment. But when the 14th Amendment was passed in the United States, 3/4 of the states banned abortion at all stages of pregnancy. And even going into the 1970s, 30 states still banned it. So they couldn't say, they had to go back and correct that mistake. They couldn't find a right to abortion in the Constitution or our history. So that was one reason they overturned it. So I imagine that if Congress managed to pass a law, that it would go to the Supreme Court and they would have to reverse it again.
You're saying they would uphold the law?
No, they would reverse it. They would reverse the law, they would just say federalizing abortion. Yes, they would reverse it because it's unconstitutional. Mm-hmm.
But where do you see all this going now? I mean, like, it just seems like obviously there's a backlash. It's kind of quirky, funny to me in a dark way that like all the protesters that we see in these clips are people in blue states, people in states where abortion is allowed. So I don't understand, what are they protesting? Are they protesting that they think it's just going to cascade from, let's say, a place like Oklahoma into California? Do they see it as like a slippery slope? Is it a slippery slope? Is it just going to remain like this state is, the states that don't have it, or is it just going to like spread out? How do you see this like progressing, this whole situation?
Well, let me jump in on that if you don't mind. These people are protesting because they've been told to protest. They're like wind-up toys that are told, day of rage, today be angry, today it's virtuous to go and riot and scream and yell, because that's all these people are capable of doing. They're not protesting for anybody's rights. They don't even know what. Tomorrow they'll be protesting about something else. But it also goes to show that this is not about personal choice, because anybody who wants to kill their child can find a way to do so. This is really about changing the society. They want to make it as killing a baby is my body, my choice. It's no one else's business. but it really affects the very fabric of the society in which these people live. The demons, the pro-baby murderers, are trying to change the fabric of the society. And it's not enough that they can do it where they're located. They want it to be the law of the land. They want this to be part of the popular culture, that this is what's being done and this is what's normal. So it has nothing to do with women's rights or personal choice. They want to change the fabric of the entire society.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Rabbi. Also, there's an interesting podcast that I listened to last night. Mr. Gallin actually sent me a link to it this morning about how this is a demonic mission to destroy children and human life. And so they have now been uncovered by their demands to be able to kill innocent people in the womb. And there's no more safe, legal, and rare, or it's healthcare, or it's a woman's right, or anything. It's uncovered, the actual evil nature of it. Pro-life people are getting together now, and they're strategizing about how to take the life issue and win in all 50 states in this country. Short of a constitutional amendment protecting human life from conception, we'll have to do it state by state. It's incredible. You know, I sometimes think that when I think of Israel and how much in the dark, and really how sad and tragic it is that abortion is so normalized in the Jewish state, and I think, oh, what are the chances of it ever turning around? You know, like Rabbi said, you know, the heart of the world where this is going on, it's so demonic, right? But I think of the United States, you know, 50 years ago, we're in serious trouble, and now we have a really strong movement. So people, activists are, I think it's 26 states have moved to now ban abortion except to save the life of the mother, and also increase pregnancy care and adoption. And they're going to go, people are going to go state by state by state. Now they're going to have trouble in New York, California, Maryland, and Colorado. Now you can kill your baby 30 days after it's born. So, but it's growing. We have these protests in front of the Supreme Court now, and most of the protesters for life this week were young high school and college women and men. They understand. They've seen ultrasounds. They know it's a baby. They missed a quarter of their friends that aren't here. They know what's happened. So they're going to take up the torch from the old guard, and they're going to do their best to protect human life and help women and families prosper.
So I want to get, this may shock you, I want to get controversial now. Not to get too personal, but, you know, years ago, I was dating someone who lived, she was in college at the time in upstate New York. And she told me that so at the time we were dating, she was like 22 years old, 21. But she told me that when she was 17 years old, she had gotten pregnant. And she went to, it was one of those clinics that basically lets ladies under the age of 18 go and, you know, get an abortion without consent of the parents and all this kind of stuff. And so she went into this clinic, and she found that you know, most of the girls there were locals from that city. So basically, it's predominantly African American and Hispanic in that city. And she's sitting there, and she's waiting, I guess, to speak to a doctor or whatever, to a nurse. And one of the girls asked her, is this your first time here? One of the girls sitting next to her, young girl, I think maybe also 17, 16. And this is like, my ex-girlfriend says, what do you mean my first time? Yeah, of course, my first time. And she said, oh, this is like my third or fourth. You know, we use this as contraception. And she spoke to another girl, same story. This is like, there's all these girls in that, and, you know, I mean, I can't imagine it's the only city like this where these underage girls, they get into the situation and they're literally using abortion as contraception. So I really, and most of them are minorities, again, African-American and Hispanic girls. So I really want to get into the whole, I guess, what I would call the Margaret Sanger question here. You keep hearing about, you know, the founder of Planned Parenthood. She was a white supremacist. Her goal was to basically, control or curtail the population of minorities. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, it's all true. First, just about the underage issue.
Yeah.
You know, it's a law in this country that if you see evidence of rape, sex trafficking, all that, you need to report it. And Planned Parenthood is notorious for not reporting these because it's return business for these clinics, right? So that's one problem. And there's undercover videos that show this happening. So the Planned Parenthood and the other the abortion industry makes possible the whole sex trafficking industry, billions of dollars, and also the pornography industry. All this stuff is very entangled. It's a very evil web. So that's one thing. The largest Planned Parenthood facility in the United States is in Houston. On one side of the road, it's a Hispanic community. On the other side of the road, it's an African American community. Deliberately put there as a eugenics vehicle. Now, Margaret Sanger was friends with Adolf Hitler. They both thought, you know, there should be a master race. She was more worried about people of color. He was more worried about, of course, Jews. But she wasn't a friend of the Jews either. She considered them human weeds, just like so many other immigrants. So, and you ask any Hillel or Jewish Gallin college who their heroine is, and she's going to say Margaret Sanger and then maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It is so frightening. So they've lionized, you know, these women, much to our dismay, you know, and destruction. So yes, it is a racist mission on their part. And in many big cities, there's, especially New York City, where it is statistically proven there are more black babies that die from abortion than get born there. And the African American population now is much lower because of this. And statistically, there are more abortions in the black community than there are black people in this country. So yeah, it's been very successful. How anybody can support an industry, I mean, that's obviously racist, especially Jews, when we have been subjected to terrible, you know, disastrous racist agendas. It's beyond me. It just shows a lack of understanding and great ignorance. And I guess the last thing I'll say about it is talk to any pro-abortion advocate and they'll say any limits on abortion, federal or state, is racist because these vulnerable women won't have access to abortion services. So
I'm actually wondering how Planned Parenthood has never been sued for false advertising, because they're planning unparenthood. They're not planning to make people parents. They're doing the exact opposite. And do they give people discount cards at that clinic you mentioned? Like you buy 2 abortions, you get the third one half price or something?
I don't know. Somebody's paying for them, Rabbi. And that's the
people are getting very wealthy off this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The abortion, there's this, I've kind of identified this money laundering scheme in abortion politics and finances. So people pay for these abortions and they're very expensive. Chemical abortions now are more than 50% of all abortions, and the markup they make on those pills is astronomical. Brought to us, thank you, by the Clinton administration and a Jewish doctor, Dr. Grossman, who just shills for the abortion industry. It's just terrible. Anyway.
Imagine if all that money was used to help these single parents. These people are having a hard time making ends meet. I think they'd be able to, you know, solve the problem of caring for the children if they really wanted to.
That's right, but they really don't. You're right. So they pay for that, and then later term abortions are thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and then somebody pays that, and then, or even though we have the Hyde Amendment, a lot of money, because we have this federal funding of abortion industry, we're still paying for a lot of it. Then the babies, if their later term gets sold, their parts get sold, millions of dollars to the fetal organ industry and research. And then Planned Parenthood and their ilk finance these political campaigns. They get these people in, and then it just goes around. Then they make sure Planned Parenthood gets the money again, and it goes all over the world. You know, we have policies that are connected to World health funding. You know, you can't get this money unless you provide abortion services. I mean, the people in Africa know what's up. Mexico City policy, the same thing. So yes, it's just a huge billion-dollar industry, and I think Mr. Gallin said earlier, follow the money. This is why it is the way it is. Even the Republicans, a lot of Republicans who will cross over are getting money, you know, through lobbyists, and it's abortion. It's all blood money. Yeah, and they don't care about the women, and they don't care about families, even though they say they do.
Well, Frank Zlenko and I have this thing on our podcast when you point out, you mentioned the Jewish doctor, Routman. When you point out that a Jew is doing something, you know, unsavory, and you point that out in public, we call that Farrakhaning. You know, you did a Farrakhan. But I guess I have my last question. Speaking of Farrakhan, it's kind of a quirky question. You know, we know that there's like this weird, I guess, marriage between the left, I guess both in America and in Europe, between the left and fundamentalist Islam. Now, I can't imagine that Muslims, like real Muslims, are in favor of Roe versus Wade. I think they're happy about this decision. So now my question is, have you thought about teaming up with these guys?
I sat on a panel, an interfaith panel at Yale University a while back now, that was hosted by the Choose Life at Yale. I met a Muslim woman on the panel, and well, we didn't come to that conclusion. But I will say this: I'm really very busy, and I don't have time to team up with somebody else. That's one thing, but I don't know if a Muslim would say this, and I'm not going to speak for them, but it's just my feeling that they wouldn't be they don't want their own babies to die, but I'm not sure they are so concerned about ours.
Yeah. So you're basically saying that it's not even a good idea, because by them it's kind of like they're trying to propagate themselves, but you know, everyone else is, you know, free to do what they want, basically.
I've always wondered, especially when Jewish people say that we should be able to murder children in the room because it's a religious right. I think of the Sharia law, that it's just Muslims trying to bring their Sharia law around the world, right? It's legal in Sharia law for mercy killing, things like that, and to kill the, you know, so I don't quite trust that mentality, no.
Yeah. Rabbi Hananiah, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of interfaith in general. I think that we have to just stick to what the Torah says. And if there are people, if there are Gentiles who also believe in the Torah, the 7 laws of Noah, which is part of our job, that's really our main job, is to spread that to the rest of the world, and they join forces with us on that basis, then that's fine. But to say, well, the Muslims agree with us, or some Christians agree with us, and therefore that makes our case stronger, is actually counterproductive. It's weakening our case. We're standing for the Torah. The Torah is pure, given to us in pure form, straight from Hashem. Other nations and other religions have borrowed certain concepts from the Torah, and those aspects may be true, but we don't make our case any stronger by joining with them.
Amen.
So I guess this is the last question, and then I guess we'll take questions from the audience. I keep hearing, I guess, that, you know, obviously we know that you mentioned Noahide laws. The Noahide laws don't really speak, you know, specifically about abortion. And so I was actually arguing with a friend of mine. He said, well, because it doesn't speak specifically, that means that non-Jews are not obligated to follow, you know, this law and that law. And I came back with, just because it doesn't address it doesn't mean that they cannot or they should not follow us or follow you know, the Torah or the Tanakh or what God essentially wants. Just because it doesn't have explicit language in the Noahide laws doesn't mean these, you know, that they're not obligated or that they shouldn't be looking to follow, you know, these laws or these precepts.
No, it actually is. This is part of the law against murdering. It says in Parshas Bereshit, "Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech." One who sheds the blood of a person inside a person, his blood shall be spilled. And Chazal darshan from that, what is a person inside a person? That is a baby in the mother's womb. So the sons of Noah, the Gentiles of the world, are actually committing an act of murder by doing abortion. It's a capital crime according to the Torah. Now, strangely enough, for the Jewish people, it's not a capital crime, but it's still a very serious crime. But either way, this fits into the 7 laws of Noah, and it is totally murder.
Yeah.
So it's something that I heard in that shir on Shavuot, that it's not a capital crime for Jews, but it's a capital crime for non-Jews. Why is that?
That's very complicated. Look, it's not the only example of that. There's also one when it comes to stealing. I mean, when a non-Jew violates any of the 7 laws, it's a capital crime. We have 600. Just to make it very simple, we have 613 laws. So not all of them are capital crimes. A guy, we don't ask very much out of the goyim of the world. They're basically the 7 laws. One law is simply having courts to enforce the other. So it's really just six laws: not to serve idolatry, not to blaspheme God, not to commit adultery, not to murder, not to steal, and not to eat from the flesh of a living animal. We're not asking very much of people. Most countries of the world have these 6 laws plus a court system on the books anyway. So what are we asking? Not murdering, not stealing, not committing adultery. So if they're violating these laws, they're savages.
Also, Zvi, just to finish, there is so much misinformation and misunderstanding among people who talk about this, Jewish people especially. We've lost a lot of our great rabbis who were very clear on the subject, right? So like Rabbi Feinstein, Rabbi Soloveitchik, they had no problem coming out clearly and saying it is murder in Judaism to kill unborn children, except in this very rare Rodef situation. And this has been lost. The propaganda and the media bias has just persuaded people something different. And so I can empathize with your trying to discuss and even argue this with other Jewish people. It's
It's very sad. I said this earlier. The Jews are actually embarrassed of the Torah, especially like the YU types, because they see that the ideal Jew, a Jew who makes it, is one who's getting praised by the goyim, by the leftists. Their greatest dream in life is to be praised by the goyim. See, we're really not so bad. We're kind of just like you anyway. Everything you're doing, we can kind of fit into the Torah. So they're actually embarrassed of their Judaism. They claim to be proud, but they're really embarrassed. They kind of kowtow to anything that the lowest of the goyim are doing. A Jew should not be ashamed of the Torah. A Jew should be proud of the Torah. If people don't like you, it's their problem. I mean, we're not here to win a popularity contest. But strangely enough, I'll tell you, I'm extremely outspoken, as you know, and generally the feedback I get, even from Gentiles, is overwhelmingly positive because they find it refreshing to hear a Jew who's not ashamed of the Torah. I'm not the greatest scholar in the world. I'm not a great rabbi or anything like that. But just when you're authentic and you're proud of the Torah, people have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm also thinking that we have a PowerPoint called Judaism, the Original Pro-Life Religion, and we show a lot of rabbis that are very pro-life in our tradition. And Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, he always said that the Torah is to be used to save life and promote life, right? Not destroy life. So if you're in an argument with somebody about anything, if you can just end up there, recognizing whatever they're saying, that Torah is about life and saving it. It is nothing else in the end. So that should guide your reasoning and just help you not get influenced by these secular ideas that have crept into our Jewish communities and our conversations.
Yeah, I would add one point, if I may. Jews that are on the fence about these issues, I would urge them to look at their friends, at their fellows on their same side of the issue. You see these people at the protest, these demons, these savages, these barbaric human beings. If these are your allies and these are your friends, it's time to rethink where you stand on these issues. These aren't decent people. The people who are pushing abortions, yeah, they'll bring up the case of the accidental pregnancy or the woman who's raped or the suffering and all that, but that's not really what it's all about. You see, these people are demons, they're savages, they're cruel, they're vicious people, and they take joy in killing and they take joy in rioting. If these are your allies, maybe it's time to rethink it.
Right. We have a home here at the Jewish Pro-Life Foundation. It's safe. And we forgive you your errant ways. Come back with us, we'll show you the way back to God. It's
and
great.
populate the world with beautiful children.
Yes, and healed souls. We want those souls healed. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like, yeah, I mean, it just seems like this is a spiritual issue. Like you watch people, like the people that are protesting, or, you know, reactions, or like these celebrity, like all these people like unhinged, or we call, you know, emotionally incontinent. It just seems like there's a, no, but it sounds funny, but there's like a spiritual issue here. It's like people are just like possessed when it comes to anything, not just abortion, just everything. And they can't think straight. You know, you talk to them about vaccines, you talk to them about this and that. And it's just, like you're, you know, they say that, what is it? Most of Twitter is bots, but I feel like even the real people sound like bots, you know? And
well,
that's really,
you know, Dennis Prager always says the beginning of wisdom is fear of God.
Yeah.
So when we disconnect from God, we're just crazy. We're just crazy, because that's what keeps our minds sane and balanced. And without that, we just become unhinged.
And unfortunately, Jews who stray from the Torah are the craziest people on earth, unfortunately. That's the truth.
Yeah. That's because we're smart, so we can use our minds for nil and not. Yeah.
So anyone have any questions before we wrap up? Look at the comment section, maybe. You can write your question, you can voice your question. Anyone? I almost want to say Bueller. Bueller?
I'll say one thing while we're waiting for any questions. Cecily asked earlier, what is Israel's chances of turning it around? I would say with confidence, 100%. We're definitely going to turn things around. How long it's going to take and how it's going to happen, that I don't know. But 100% guaranteed we are eventually, hopefully very soon, going to turn this around. America, I don't think the odds are as strong, maybe 50-50.
I spoke to Rabbi Kessin today, and he basically said that it's not an accident that, you know, if you understand that all current events are from Hashem or dictated by Hashem, it's not an accident that this you know, whatever this thing was that you call a government in Israel collapsed in the same week as the Roe versus Wade thing. So it's almost like there's parallel things happening, and we may be seeing some kind of like turning a corner point. And he actually even added, we know that because, you know, he's talking about the Satan is dying, right? So when the Satan is dying, it's fighting like hell. You know, it's screaming, it's stomping its feet, it's yelling, you know, we want our rights, we want this, we want that. But it might just be a turning point. And you know, I guess we'll see what happens with this congressional elections. Maybe they'll cheat, maybe they won't, maybe they will cheat, and you know, they still will lose. Who knows? I think we have a question.
Sweet. I put my my email in the chat. We have wonderful memes and graphics that I want to get posted in Israeli social media, but we need people to help us translate the English text. So if anybody wants to do that, email me. I'll send you an image, and if you give us the Hebrew, then I'll send it. You know, we can get it posted, and we're going to start hopefully getting our message out there. Yeah.
It's Cecily at Jewish
Pro-Life Foundation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if there's no questions, anyone? I guess we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, Cecily. Rabbi Hananiah, great as always. I guess, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll speak soon. If Lowell organizes it, I guess. I'm assuming the guy. And thank you so much, Lowell, and everyone else who was on the, I guess, in the gallery. And I guess I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.